Welcome to another edition of Theology Thursdays. Today I want to look at a verse in John, but kind of build from there a little bit of an understanding of who Jesus is, and really what was the accusation against him that caused them to end up executing him, at least from the perspective of the religious leaders of his day. So in John chapter 8 and verse 58, Jesus is discussing being the children of Abraham, and Abraham rejoiced to see his day, and they're responding with, I'm 50 years old. How in the world could you have Abraham be rejoicing to see your day, kind of thing. And then in John chapter 8, verse 58, Jesus makes this statement: before Abraham was, I am. So there are two significant things about that statement. The first one is the fact that Jesus existed before Abraham. Abraham was the father of the Old Testament faith. He is the one that God entered into covenant with in Genesis 12, 15, and 17. The Jews put a lot of stock in being descendants of Abraham in Jesus' day, and so he says, I'm more important than Abraham. I'm older than Abraham. And that indicates the eternality of Jesus, that he is eternal, that he has always existed. That kind of bothered them, but at this point, they're probably thinking, maybe he just kind of doesn't have it all together. But when Jesus states those two words, I am, is very, very significant. It carries a tremendous theological impact. And they got it because the Bible says that they immediately picked up stones and were going to stone him right there because of what he said. And Jesus hid himself and disappeared from their midst out of the temple. So I want to take just a few minutes and talk about I am, what it means, and the significance of Jesus using this statement, I am. So to help us, I've got a little chart here, and I've color-coded it to try to make it maybe a little bit easier to comprehend. So in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, Moses has asked God, after he's been commissioned to go and deliver the people from Egypt, says, when I get there, who do I tell them sent me? Like, what's your name? And God responds with those famous words, I am who I am. Now in Hebrew, which I have color-coded in light blue, is the word Echad, which is the one that's translated I am. However, without getting all the technicalities of Hebrew, it could actually be translated a number of different ways. I am is only one possibility. There are a number of other ways that it could be translated. In fact, there's one or two ways that probably are better translations just in terms of Hebrew. So then why in Exodus 3:14 do English translations translate this as I am rather than something else? Well, the reason is because when Alexander the Great came through, the Greek language became the common language of much of the known world at that time, and Greek was continued by the Roman Empire. So, a tradition says that 70 elders in 70 days translated the Old Testament from Hebrew into Greek, because many Jews no longer spoke Hebrew, they just spoke the common language of Greek. Much like we as Christians read an English Bible. Most people don't read Hebrew or Greek, so we read an English Bible. So they translated it into Greek for people to use it. Now when they came to this statement in Exodus 3:14, they translated it with a particular Greek phrase, ego eimi. And you'll see here I've color-coded in red. So this is the Greek part. So you see the Hebrews in light blue and the Greeks in red. It'll help us just to kind of distinguish what we have. So I assume you don't read Hebrew and Greek. And in Greek, that does specifically translate as I am. There's really no other way to translate it as I am. So they understood Exodus 3:14 for God to say I am who I am. So they translated it this way. Now why is that so important for us? Well, the reason that's important is because we get to John chapter 8, verse 58. The New Testament is written in Greek, not in Hebrew. And so guess what words Jesus uses? Before Abraham was, same words. You'll notice they're still in red. Ego eimi. Jesus uses the exact same words in the exact same form that we find in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. So Jesus is not just sort of randomly throwing out these words, for Abraham was I am, like just kind of tossing it out there. He is making a direct connection between himself and the God of the Exodus. In other words, what he is saying is that before Abraham was, I'm God. He is clearly identifying himself with God. Let me see if I can kind of show us graphically how this works out. So what we find is this Hebrew word for God, this Greek term for God, this same Greek term for Jesus. So we move from Hebrew to Greek in the Old Testament to Jesus in the New Testament. So since this term, I am, is used both in Hebrew and the Greek translation of the Old Testament to mean God, when Jesus uses it, what he is saying is he is equal to God. He is God. So what we find in John 8:58 is Jesus' self-declaration that he is God. So sometimes you'll hear people say, well, Jesus never claimed to be God. Jesus never claimed to be the Messiah. Jesus never claimed to be divine. Actually, that is a fallacy. Jesus never actually used the words, I am God. He didn't have to. Jesus used God's self-designation, I am, for himself. So, kind of a weird way to think about this is, Chicken Man is my nickname. So, if someone was to say, Paul is Chicken Man, and Paul is pastor, then Chicken Man is pastor. So, God is I am is Jesus, therefore God is Jesus. I know it's kind of a goofy way of trying to illustrate it, but Jesus is making this clear designation and this clear delineation, and that's why they understood it in John 8:59. It says they took up stones and were going to stone him because they recognized that Jesus was claiming to be God. As a matter of fact, we can read later in Matthew chapter 21 that they're like, hey, you claim to be the Son of God. And Jesus said, no, you have said so. As a matter of fact, from now on, I'm going to be sitting at the right hand of the power in heaven and coming in the clouds of glory. And the high priest tore his robes and said, this man has spoken blasphemy, therefore he needs to be executed. Now, probably there were a multitude of reasons that they wanted to get rid of Jesus. Jealousy, what they viewed as a power struggle, selfishness, envy. There are probably a number of reasons, but the official reason that the Jewish religious leaders gave for having Jesus executed was the fact that he claimed to be God. They understood him saying, I am, as equating himself with God. We understand him saying, I am, as Jesus equating himself with God. And so we are reminded again of the divinity of Jesus. Now let me there are a lot of tons of implications of this, of course, but let me just share one of them that resonates with me a great deal. In addition to being the pastor here at First Baptist, I'm also a professor of Hebrew and Old Testament. And in addition to teaching the regular Old Testament introduction and Hebrew introduction classes, I do teach some electives, just classes students can take if they're interested. They're not required for their degree. There are some optional classes that you can take that will count towards getting your degree, but they're not required. One of my favorite ones to teach is a class called Messiah in the Old Testament. And it's really interesting as we work through the Old Testament and we see many of the statements that are made predicting the coming Messiah. One of the things that just rings so loudly when you look at them is the divine nature of the Messiah. Matter of fact, one of the reasons why I think the Jewish leaders missed it of Jesus' day is because they were looking for a kingly Messiah, which is certainly taught in the Old Testament. They were not looking for a suffering Messiah, that's for sure. But neither were they looking for a divine Messiah. And yet, the divinity of the Messiah is emphasized over and over and over and over again. From Balaam's prophecy in Numbers, what's called the Star and Scepter prophecy, Genesis 49, what's called the Great Shiloh prophecy, certainly Isaiah chapter 9, where he is everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, the mighty God. I mean, this coming messiahs, all of these things. And so Jesus makes a self-declaration that he is God by saying, I am. He connects himself with the burning bush experience of Moses, where God said, I am that I am. So our Messiah is not just some great human being. He is also divine. He is Emmanuel, which means God with us, that he is with us. Here's the way John put it in John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. Then he goes on later to make this comment in John 1:14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory. The glory is of the only begotten of the Father. In other words, when we see Jesus saying, I am, it's not just a theological declaration of his divinity. It's also a personal declaration that the God of the universe has become one of us. The old Puritans talked about his condescension, that he came from heaven down to us. That Jesus is not an elevated human being. Jesus is a human being who is also God, who has descended to us, to be with us. So it's interesting when we think about this, God coming down and then dying for us on the cross and all. And yet how does Jesus end his earthly ministry? With exactly this. After he gives the Great Commission, go unto all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. In other words, Jesus ends his ministry by reminding us that he is still God with us. That the Messiah that we have put our faith in to forgive us, the Messiah who died on the cross, is the great I am. He is I am that I am. Before Abraham was, Jesus says, I am. So this is our Messiah, the great I am, the one who is eternal. God, who has come down and become flesh, we beheld his glory. So I hope this has encouraged you today. Not only think about the divinity of Jesus and the theological significance of that and all this I am stuff in Hebrew and Greek and all that, which is a lot of fun and kind of cool. But also the fact that you are a Christian because the great I am became flesh, dwelt among us, and gave his flesh on the cross, poured out his blood, paid the penalty for our sin. So I hope that encourages you. And remember that, lo, he is with you always, all the time, everywhere, in everything, even to the end of the age. Man, what great and comforting words from the great I am.